Hello, BEA beautiful people, and welcome to our first pre-release primer. Pre-releases really hold a special place in my heart. I've participated in them for as long as I can remember playing Magic. And to this day, no matter how competitive I got, how spiky I was, I still made time for the pre-release. And Ravnica being one of the greatest worldscapes that WotC has ever put together, really brings together everything you want to see in a pre-release. A clear path to build a deck, a clear plan when you go in, and tons of fun splashy cards. So we're going to go over kind of what to expect and what to think about as you're heading into your pre-release this upcoming weekend. I'm going to be hitting up the pre-release, and these are thoughts that I've had and things like that. So it's going to really kind of give you an idea of where you want to go, what you want to build, maybe what you're on the lookout before you even get there. And we're going to try and give you sort of an idea so that you don't go in there completely in the dark. What you want to look at for things like, value even, because I see that a lot. I see a lot of times that people are going to take advantage of their knowledge of the value and try and do some early trades and things like that. And I think that's great to get your early trades out of the way, but you've got to be really careful so that you don't run into issues like maybe this card was $10, maybe this card was $20, those kind of things. You don't want to get ripped off. So one of the things to keep in mind, though, when it comes to that kind of stuff, and we'll cover this more in depth later, is that prices are constantly changing. So you want to make sure that you look at a good price list going in if you plan to do any trading whatsoever. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So let's get right to it. First thing is what to expect. So what to expect when you go to any pre-release is different depending on kind of the themes when it comes to the pre-release and, where WotC is trying to drive you. In this one, it's all about the guilds. So let's talk about what guilds we have in the second set of the Ravnica block. So we have the Azaria City, blue-white, typically known as more of a control, sort of stall the game for a little bit longer than normal. And in this one, they've got some elements of that, but there's also some elements of, a more kind of mid-rangey sort of, I've got the bigger flyers, my guys, make it difficult for you to block or attack the way that you would want to, and things like that. You've also got the Cult of Rakdos, red-black cult here. They are hyper-aggressive, and typically with some sacrificial elements. So, eat a creature, do more damage. When a creature dies, this happens. When you deal damage, do more stuff. And we'll talk about each guild's unique ability as well. So when you are playing Rakdos, the idea is going to be low to the ground and aggressive. The Gruul clans are green red, and they embody the actual aggro element. So these are aggressive creatures, aggressive spells, typically pump spells, that make their creatures better and bigger and faster. And so with the Gruul clans, you've got that aggressive line, but you're also going to be doing it with a more creature focus. The Orzhov Syndicate and the Black-White Guild for this set is really kind of focused around survivability. The Orzhov Syndicate tends to have things that make your creatures either survive or give you a benefit that helps you survive or keep your plan going, no matter whether they live or die. You'll see a lot of the kind of lifelinky creatures here. You'll see a lot of when the creature dies, get this thing, and all those kind of triggers like that. A little blended with what you see with Rakdos, but with their own unique take on things. And then one of my personal favorites, I'm not going to lie here, is the Civic Combine. This is green-blue. This combines the power of creatures and spells in a way that will allow you to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Now, the Civic Combine in the past has not been super well represented in its creature power level, and sometimes the abilities don't hit home. And I think that part of that has to do with combining green and blue can be very dangerous from a set building kind of aspect. It is very easy to cross the line from good into busted when it comes to this. So they tend to err on the side of maybe not so great. And unfortunately, you'll see that a lot of times in their linear themes, but the individual cards, it's very easy to pick out specific ones that are great. And there's a lot of utility in this color. Things, creatures do other things than just beat face, which in the Gruul clans, you're going to see a lot of that's what they do is they beat face. So when you get to the pre-release, you're going to get your pre-release kit. So after you've chosen your guild, you'll get a guild-represented pre-release kit. So for me, I'll probably be choosing the Civic. I don't necessarily think that that's maybe the most powerful guild to pick, but it is, near and dear to my heart in the way that it functions. So that's the way that I'm going to be leaning. Now, what you're going to get in this, you're going to get 5 Ravnica Allegiance booster packs and 1 guild-specific seeded booster pack. And the guild-specific seeded booster pack, from what we understand of how these work, is going to have a rare that has watermarked and is specific in the Simic. So you might see a blue card, but you can't see a blue card that's allied with the Azorius. It's going to be a blue Simic card. So, there's a fine line, and it's going to come down to the watermarks that are on it, and we'll talk a little bit later when we get to the guilds what those watermarks are. Also, I believe we're going to get a locket and a guild gate that is for the guild that you picked, and the rest of the cards in the pack should actually move in line with that as well. So you won't be seeing any Azorius watermarked in the Civic pack and vice versa. You should see only cards that fit with the Simic concept. You also get a guild-specific spin-down die, and that's going to be the traditional one where you'll have the guild symbol on the top, and it'll spin down from 20, represented by the symbol, down to 1, and you'll get some promo material too. This is pretty typical. It'll be advertisements, most likely for MTG Arena and some of their other products. So my early thoughts in this when it comes to the speed of the format is that with Rakdos and Gruul both being in the set, I expect it to be, pretty aggressive. If you look at the Orzhov, Azorius, and Simics, they are representative of control colors, especially blue-white, black-white, blue-green. These are typical combinations that you see in control decks. But, for example, with the Simic, they have a creature-focused ability. And for the example, with the Orzhov, they have a creature-focused ability. And with the Azorius, they're the only ones that get one that has the ability to go on both creatures and spells. So they are definitely kind of the slower, grindier one. But the green aspect being in Simic gives it that creature-centric focus. Now, typically, they're not super aggro. They're going to be more mid-range. And then the Orzhov, they're also going to be, that later mid-range kind of aspect to them. But they're still creature-centric. With the Azorius, you're sort of split down the middle. And I don't know if that's good, bad, or how it's going to be. I'm going to have to kind of see how it plays out a little bit. But the fact that you have 2 hyper-aggressive guilds, and you have 2 creature-focused abilities in the other 3 guilds, I expect this format to be relatively fast. So a strong curve, and either ways to deal with early threats or your own early threats, or preferably both, is going to be key, I believe. And that's what's really important in the deck construction, is going to be, really making sure your curve, your attention to early threats is really, really high. In combat, it looks like blocking, yet again, not so good for this format. So, be on the attack, be on the lookout for those pump spells, and really keep that in mind. Mana fixing with the gates, and guaranteed a 5-color gate has shown up, a reflecting pool gate is also around, and you've got the chance at Shocklands. Green's also got a little bit more fixing on top of that. I expect mana fixing to be relatively easy. I don't know if it's so easy to call it, Shards of Alara easy, where you can play 3 colors, that was the whole point. I think you can play 2 and a splash if that splash is really, really worth it. On the outlier strategies, I haven't really seen anything yet that kind of sticks out like the old Mnemonic Wall kind of setups. So I think this is going to be a pretty straightforward, little low on the skill intensive level when it comes to discovering the new aspects. I'm not saying there aren't any out there. There's just none that really jump to mind in the early parts of this format. Somebody, smarter than me might find one down the road, and more power to them. We'll have to kind of see how that goes. But as for outliers, I expect most of the ones that you're going to run into are going to be pretty simple to figure out what's going on. If they're Rakdos, they're going to burn you and kill you, and that's what they're going to do. And if they're, Simic, they're going to have these large creatures that they grow larger, and they're going to do things bigger, and that kind of thing. If they're Gruul, expect aggressive, cheaply costed, high power toughness creatures, those kind of things. Everything's pretty linear based around the guild that you pick, so I'm not too shocked to see anything there. If you're super early to pre-releases, if you haven't done a ton of these, you're going to want to pay attention to how you construct your deck. So in the deck constructions, when you go to sleeve up, it's pretty typical that you want to have 17 lands, 23 non-lands. There is a loose kind of adage where they tell you to have, 16-ish creatures to go with that. And I honestly say play the best cards in your deck. If you have 14 creatures, 13 creatures, it doesn't mean play a really, really bad creature and not play a good spell just so that you can hit that number. But if you do drop below that 16, 17 mark range on your creatures, keep in mind that your creatures are more valuable than your opponents most of the time. So always good. Make sure if you go with that third color that you have the extra mana fixing that you need for that. Don't stress it just based on nothing. You're going to want a couple of sources for the first off-color mana symbol that you have. So, if you have one red, you're going to want a couple of red sources. If you have 2 red, you're going to want like 3 red sources. If you have 3 red, you're probably going to want 4 red sources. And these are single instances of the mana symbol. Double mana symbol, double red spells. You're going to want to avoid unless your mana fixing is really, really, really good, or the card is insanely good, and to the point there, if you fall behind with this card in your hand, it is going to win you the game. There are not a ton of instances of where that's going to really play in, so unless you're super confident in your mana, stick away from those double color splashes. Again, I mentioned curve earlier. It is, I think, super important here. You're going to want to be able to deal with the 2 and 3 drops. There's not a lot of 1 drops that scare me, in this format. It's not the old Zendikar days where you're dead by turn 3 or 4. This is more along the lines of powerful 2s, powerful 3s, and some pretty insane 4s depending on which set or which guild you're in. And so making sure that curves smoothly with your creatures, make sure that your spells and your creatures can handle your opponents having a strong curve, because they're going to. We touched on colors earlier. You are going to almost assuredly be playing 2, I'd probably say something like 80% of the time, if not more. And the few times that you're not, you're probably playing 3 with a splash of the third color for 1 or 2 cards. These cards need to be highly impactful. Your mana fixing needs to be able to support it, those kind of things. Mana sources, we talked about, 17 is pretty much the gold standard for this. Occasionally you'll find a deck that wants an 18th because it has a lot of card filtering. And sometimes you'll find the one that has 16 because it has an extremely low curve and no stressful mana requirements. For today, though, most guilds or Ravnica Allegiance decks at the pre-release are probably going to have 17 mana sources, mana or lands specifically, and probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 19 mana sources. So you'll have 1 or 2 sources of mana that aren't represented by lands. Now, if you can get that, that's great. If your deck, you think you require 18 because you have no bonus mana sources, I get that. If you want to go down to 16 because you have 3 or 4 extra mana sources, I get that as well. But keep in mind with those mana sources, especially things like lockets, that they cost mana too. So you need to be able to make sure you're consistently hitting the mana that those cost. If you're doing this, then maybe you can cut a land. I am loath to cut down to 16 in many, many formats, but I have done it. So now it comes down to Moneyball. We've got kind of three categories here, and so this is $20+ cards, $10 to $20 cards, and then just some notable ones that are popping up. Now, I use MTG Goldfish. Seth is pretty well known around the MTG scene, and the website that he represents is insanely good. So, one thing to keep in mind, we're early. It is the beginning of the week. Prices are falling like a rock, like they always do. And these prices are not going to be up to date by the time you get to the pre-release. But check in. You know, you're going to a midnight pre-release. Hit MTG Goldfish before you head out. Look it over real quick. See what their prices are at. Know a general idea of what some of these are. Or heck, we all carry a smartphone around. Pull the thing up on your phone. Take a look at the prices. Know your prices when you go in there. We have a couple of chases by, chase mythics and rares. The lands are obviously super, super popular. And they're, bringing in a pretty good dollar for the foils for you're looking at most of these $20, $25 for the foils. There are not any that just stick out to me, the non-foils that I'm like, I gotta have. But in this $10 to $20 range, you've got quite a few. And again, some of it will come down to, cards that you want. It's cool to trade a $10 card off for, 2 5s. That's fine. But if you're getting the raw end of the deal and you're trading down, keep that in mind that maybe you need to make some additional changes. The other thing I would say is that MTG Goldfish is great for having an arrow to tell you kind of where the prices are going with these cards. And that is a lifesaver a lot of times. So you want to keep an eye on anything that has gone up in value in that last day. That means decks are starting to surface that actually use it. Now, this is just a general thing to keep in mind anytime you're looking at a new set or anytime you're trading in general. But you want to have an eye on that kind of stuff. Last on the what to expect is promo codes. So we have got 3 promo codes for MTG Arena this go around. And this was pretty well known that they were out there, but when I went to my last pre-release for Guilds of Ravnica, a lot of people didn't know this. In the pre-release kit, there is a promo code, and it is on the back of a card, or at least it was last time, and it will get you a free draft, I believe, and on MTG Arena. It is absolutely worth it. It's 1 per account, so you don't have to try and snag up anybody's. If you go to 2 or 3 pre-releases, hand them out to your friends. If you're a content creator, give them to your subscribers and followers and stuff like that. Share the wealth kind of thing. Get it out there. There are plenty of people. I believe on Reddit last time there was a thread for people who had extras. Also, the Planeswalker decks. There is a promo code in there where you can get a copy of the deck on MTG Arena. So, if you're into those kind of things, definitely be on the lookout for that, and hopefully we'll see you in the arena. There's also a set promo. You can put in the promo code Play Allegiance, and you will get 3 packs of Ravnica Allegiance. So, if you're an MTG Arena player, type it in. It's 3 free packs. They just changed what packs do. There's no set duplication after the 17th. 3 more days, and we won't have to worry about that 5th rare, that 5th mythic. We'll just get other rares or mythics, or if we have them all, we'll get gems. So get your 3 free packs. Again, 1 per account, and enjoy. So now what we're going to do is we're going to kind of talk about each individual guild. And we're going in no particular order here, just alphabetical, I guess. And we're going to start out with the Azaria City. Or Senate, even. So, the Azaria Senate is blue-white. Their keyword is Addendum. If you cast this spell during your main phase, it gains an additional effect. You can see their watermark there, and we've got a couple notable cards. Both of them, one Dovin, one based around Dovin. So they get a Planeswalker this go around. 3-drop Planeswalker, 3 loyalty. Anytime you have a 3-drop Planeswalker, you have to pay attention to it. Do I think this guy is busted beyond belief? No. Do I think he's even as good as Baby Jace? I don't think so. But it does -1 to create a Thopter and gain you a little bit of life, so it has a little bit of protection, which is good. Now his plus is, is fine, but it's not insane, and his minus is obviously very good. I really wanted to highlight Dovin's Acuity here. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life and you draw a card. So it's very reminiscent of Disinformation Campaign in that you can return it to your hand to cast this over and over again. Now, gaining 2 life and drawing your card for 3 mana as a sorcery speed, a little iffy. But whenever you cast an instant spell during your main phase, so if you choose to cast it on your turn during your main phase, you get to return it to your hand. It essentially gives all of your instants addendum, return this to your hand. I wanted to point that out because they're really pushing the addendum on the Azaria Senate. Even though this one doesn't say addendum, it functions very similarly. Now, it's too bad that it doesn't work on sorceries. I think it'd be kind of cool. I get that there's no sacrifice being made because that's when you cast them. But the addendum ability obviously is on flash creatures and instants because everything else you're going to cast in your main phase anyhow. Now, the Azaria Senate, from what I've seen, has definitely the strongest control element for Ravnica Allegiance. It's got ways to slow the game down. It's got ways to draw additional cards, gain life, really make the game take a long time, where little advantages like gaining 2 life and drawing a card are going to stack up over time. Little things like creating a 1/1 colorless Thopter and gaining life is going to stack up over time. And all of these small advantages, if you can buy yourself into the late game, are going to stack up to the point where you stand a good chance of winning. Now, the Azorius in the past has been one of my favorite guilds. I do like this style of play, and if I pick up an Azorius kit, I'm not going to be sad. Now you have the Cult of Rakdos. I think when it comes to the Cult of Rakdos, I think they have some of the more impactful constructed cards. But at the same time, I also think they have some of the least playable constructed cards. These cards tend to go both ways. So their keyword is Spectacle. Now, you may cast this spell for its Spectacle cost rather than its mana cost if an opponent lost life this turn. And you can see their watermark down below. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with this is that Spectacle cost isn't necessarily cheaper than the original mana cost. So you'll see in some cases that it is a discount on the cost of the spell. In some cases, it's actually cost more, but you get an additional effect. And I didn't put one over here in the notable cards section that has Spectacle, but it is one of those ones, it completely varies. What it's going to do is completely different. So it sounds like you're getting this same effect on every single card that has Spectacle, but because of the way they did it, it actually has kind of 2 effects. Either you get to play the card at a discount, or you unlock this kicker mode, essentially. Now, over here we've got Rakdos the Showstopper. He is, the namesake of the guild. And while he isn't necessarily, going to be seen everywhere, you're obviously slamming him if this is what you open in your seeded pack. You're going to be happy to play it. And he is easily splashable in like Gruul, or, later on once we have, or in Orzhov, you can easily splash him. Any of the ones that touch with 1 color. So he's a beast, no doubt. But the scarier one here to me is Judith the Scourge Diva. At 3 mana for a 2/2, not super impressive. She also gives your creatures +1/+0, so the half an Anthem effect in red-black is pretty nice. Pretty traditional not to get toughness, since it is not the, balanced color combination. It's the more aggressive one. But that last part's the important part. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, Judith the Scourge Diva deals 1 damage to any target. So trading in combat just became much more advantage towards your side. Picking off a creature with a removal spell, maybe nab that guy with 1 toughness as a bonus. This is going to be a very aggressive card, and we're going to see this in Constructed, and if you're lucky enough to open it in your sealed pool, congratulations. Up next, the hyper-aggressive, creature-centric Gruul Clams in Green Red. Their keyword is probably one of the more simple ones, but at the same time I think will lead to some of the most complex decisions to be made. So their keyword is Riot. This creature, so only on creatures, enters the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. Do you choose to make it bigger, or do you choose to make it faster? You can see their watermark down below, and they too get a Planeswalker. Domri is back. He is the Chaos Bringer. 4 mana for a 5 loyalty. +1, it's going to give you a mana, and if you spend it on a creature, it doesn't force you to, which is kind of nice, but if you spend it on a creature, that creature is going to gain Riot, and multiple instances of the word Riot stack. So if it already has Riot, now you can give a +1/+1 counter and haste, or 2 +1/+1 counters, or haste, you know, just because. So Domri looks pretty good here for the limited format, and in Constructed you might even see this around some. I'm sure you're going to. Also, not to mention when we were talking about Moneyball earlier, anytime you get a Planeswalker, if you're not interested in playing with it after the event, you can usually trade off for some stuff that you might be. Now again, Domri's big and splashy and powerful, but an uncommon takes the slot as most interesting card for this color combination. Check out Rhythm of the Wild. 3 mana enchantment. Creature spells you control can't be countered. That's not bad by itself. Like, you're up against a control deck and you're trying to resolve these big, beefy creatures or ones that have enter the battlefield effects that do things. And, your opponent's like, no fun for you, counter. In this case, if you can slip in a Rhythm of the Wild underneath a counter spell, all your creatures are safe from now on. But on top of that, the non-token creatures are going to get Riot. Like we talked about, they do stack. So that means your creature has Riot, well now it's got Riot. And it's just like a Zoot Suit Riot. This card has all the implications in the world when it comes to Constructed. It is probably one of the cards that is highest on everybody's radar and that is in everybody's deck building ideas. But in Limited, it's still super good. The counter part, not as relevant, not gonna lie. But all of your creatures getting the option to be 1 bigger on the front and back end, or getting haste, can easily snag you a game. Your opponent has 3 blockers, they're at 3, they think they're fine, play a 3/3, give it haste, and kill them. They even have 4 blockers, and you have 3 creatures. Well, there's no way you have 2 Riot creatures in your hand, right? Well, with this card, of course you do. You always have Riot creatures if you have creatures. So this card is going to allow for some splashy, aggressive wins, and it's going to force your opponent to be more on the defense because any creature you play potentially has haste. This is probably my pick for the best guild to select. Now, I think it's close. I think if we assume that they're the best, so they're a 10 out of 10, there is another guild that we get to a little later that may be a 9.5. I don't think you can go super wrong from what I've seen in any of the guilds. I think they're all very, very close, but I think that Gruul is going to lead to the most wins from a player who is maybe not as versed in the set or potentially even the game. And it is definitely my pick for one of the most fun abilities in Riot. Second to last, we've got the Orzhov Syndicate, black and white here. Theirs is an afterlife, that's their keyword. Whenever this creature dies, so again, creature only, you're going to create a certain number of 1/1 white and black spirit creature tokens with flying. So, creature dies, you get X 1/1 flying spirits. I've seen Afterlife 1, Afterlife 2, there's going to be things that interact with this. They're going to have other ways, but it's just saying that when this creature dies, leave behind these spirits. And you can see their watermark down below. Now they too get a Planeswalker and another 3-drop, which they have not done these 3-drops in a long time. So here we have Kaya, the Orzhov Usurper. Now Kaya, I personally don't think has a very impactful set of abilities, either in limited or constructed. And mainly it's because of this -1 that she has. Exile target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. Now, in the Legacy format, in the Vintage format, maybe she sees some play because that's pretty relevant there. But in the Standard that we play, she's not going to impact the board very much with that. And the plus ability of exiling 2 cards, it's great. And maybe I play a couple in a sideboard if I'm playing a black-white control deck, if a graveyard-focused deck really pops up. Right now, we're not even really seeing it that much. There's a touch of it with Phoenix, and a little bit here and there from some of the other abilities, but it's just not that important right now. Now, here's my thing, though. This card, to me, feels like it was included in the set not because it fits yet. Anytime I see these abilities that I feel like they should be more impactful, but they're not, it makes me think what's coming next that they already know about. So sets are developed years in advance. They know what's coming. So I'm wondering if we're going to have something where she is more relevant. And if that's true, I may pick up this sleeper. Just as a personal kind of hedge against something I want to play. Because, trust me, in a world where she is good, where she is a powerful Planeswalker, I kind of want to play her in that format. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's talk a little about Tessia. Tessia is back again. With her, if a creature dying causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So we've got Deathamanicon here. Also, creature tokens you control have Vigilance and Lifelink. Not irrelevant, I'm sure. I mean, giving your spirits even just Vigilance and Lifelink is pretty powerful. But I got a feeling this is going to happen a little bit more. Now, Tessia is, I think, going to be ridiculous. Obviously, with Afterlife, she's insane. But I feel like she might, and I use quote marks here, air quotes, a little bit loosely, might be constructed playable. I don't know for sure yet, but combined with the new 4-mana Wrath, I think that this could happen. I don't have a spot for it yet. I don't even have a rough shell. Just any time that you have an ability that says double, it makes me interested. So even if we're not playing a constructed powerhouse tier 1 super mega build, I still think she's going to be fun to build, and that kind of sparks my interest. Last, but in my mind at least, certainly not least, we have the Civic Combine. Your green-blue guild here gets what I have to admit is a weaker ability, and their keyword is adapt. So if this creature has no +1/+1 counters on it, you get to put in counters on it, +1/+1 counters. So adapt by itself is monstrous. It is a remake of Monstrous that is fixed, because I guess Monstrous was too powerful. So in this case, you can't use like before you couldn't use Monstrous if it was already Monstrous. Now you can't use Adapt if it already has +1/+1 counters on it. And it can get those from anywhere. Now, what they've done though is that most of the Adapt creatures have, if it would gain a +1/+1 counter, trigger an ability on it. So for example, when one that really pops up into my mind and a card to keep out there is the 2-mana 2/2 that has 3 mana Adapt 2 and when it gets a +1/+1 counter, you can go search for another one. This card seems really good and showcases what I'm talking about when it comes to triggering. So on Zagana, you just have Adapt. She gets 6 mana +4/+4. And that's pretty cool. But she's got these other abilities too. So when it enters a battlefield, if you control another creature with a +1/+1 counter on it, you get to draw a card. Not busted by any means, but you have an aggressively costed 4 mana 4/4 that sometimes will draw you a card is not bad. I'm not going to lie. She also, each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Trample. Now, Trample on an 8/8, which is what she can become, is fine. But the fact that you can just randomly give your guys Trample on all of them makes her a must-kill target. Now, she's definitely worth playing if you open her, but I don't know if outside of maybe a 1-of, or I guess you could stretch it to 2, if she'll see constructed play. Prime Speaker Vanifair, though, has lit up the internet. This is the return of Birthing Pod. Or at least, that's what they say. Now, it's not Birthing Pod, first of all. It doesn't activate the turn it comes into play. It has to survive on what is the easiest to kill style of card, or type of card, in creature. So, it's just not Birthing Pod. However, it's still good. Combine this with the ability to go up the chain into larger and larger creatures can really add a crazy level of depth. And if she survives, it's going to be something worth writing home about. So that card that I could remember is Growth Chamber Guardian. That's what it is. This card is insane. Now, in sealed, it's not going to matter that much, but if you do get into a draft next week, that card's so good. It's so good. All right, back to Prime Speaker Vanifair. 4 mana for a 2/4. I'm not like over the moon, but this card's good. Play it if you open it. You know, don't force green or blue for it, I don't think. But if you are playing with it, definitely keep in mind you need a clear path of ascension through your mana curve in your creatures. Don't have just one 3-drop, because if you only have one 3-drop, your chain is going to break more often. And you want to be able to, at any time, move up that chain, and you're going to need to know your deck list very well. Is it worth sacrificing this 4-drop to move up the chain? So it's definitely something to keep in mind. This will be what I'm picking in the Civic Combine. A lot of this has to do with my love for Civic and the fact that it may have one of my favorite cards in a long time in a virtual reprint of Dark Thicket Wolf. I won an unbelievable number of drafts with Dark Thicket Wolf back in the Dark Ascension days, and I suspect with Civic Growth Champion, or Growth Chamber Champion, that I will again be using that to great advantage. So I want to kind of check it out. If I'm forced into the other guilds, I am not upset. But blue-green is the love of my life when it comes to color combinations, so I'll have to stay true. So my final thoughts for Ravnica Allegiance. First of all, it looks amazing. I'm going to have so much fun with the pre-release. I hope you do too. I think the fact that they've included the promo codes for MTG Arena is fantastic. More people should play Arena. They had a huge announcement today, and it is amazing. This is one of the first times since they went into open beta with Arena that I am very, very positive about the future of Arena. They made great positive strides, and including the promo codes in the Ravnica Allegiance pre-release kits and Planeswalker decks and giving out 3 free packs, I think is the right idea. Push Arena. I hope everybody moves to it. I'm glad to see that it's popular, and I can't wait to see some of you guys across the virtual table from me playing some Ravnica Allegiance. I will obviously be sealed playing on Arena. I'll be drafting on Arena. This set looks great, great, great. Pick up any of the guilds. You're not going to be angry. There's definitely been times where you had to choose something, and it was a big fight at the pre-releases because there was a clear winner. In this case, I don't feel that way. In Guilds of Ravnica, I would have been a little down had I gotten, like, I guess Golgari was kind of, for me, a little low on the list. Is it, while being easily one of my favorite color combinations as well, was obviously weaker. The Celestia Boros connection was huge, and Dimir, again, felt a step below. In this case, I feel like there is a clear winner. I think Gruul is probably the best, but I don't think the rest are so far behind. Simic may be one of the weaker ones, and the Orzhov Syndicate definitely feels like it's probably the quote-unquote weakest, but I feel like they're not as far behind. So I think you can have fun no matter what you end up with. I hope you do have fun. In the comments down below, what guild are you picking? I've told you I'm going Simic. If I get any of the others, I'll be fine. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you want, why, and as this is one of my first videos, I've been streaming a lot, and you can find the links down to our Twitch channel down below where we'll have live content. But tell me your feedback on this video. I'd love to hear it. Hit me with a comment down below. Tell me what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of, what I could have done better, what I did great. I'd love to hear all your feedback as we get these additional videos out each and every week and really learn from that. So, for the Ravnica Allegiance pre-release primer, this is Uber Jester. You guys have a great day. Have fun at the pre-release, and I will see you again next time.